Hello everyone, it is Aussielect back. Today we are talking about the Senate. I'm going to give my predictions and thoughts of how the Senate is looking based on current opinion polling for the next federal election. Before we start, I do want to talk a little bit about why I've chosen each particular sort of party here on the sidebar. I'm very aware that Katter and Center Alliance did not run in the last Senate election. I have them here because they have seats in the lower house, and there's a chance they might run. Honestly, there's no real relevant party at the moment other than the parties listed here. David Pocock is actually in he does actually have his own political party, and he's had it since the previous federal election. He was smart enough to register as a political party so that he could get a name above the line on the Senate ballot paper, such as the case with other quote unquote independents. I will also mention that last video, right at the end, I had an error, which I've now corrected. David Van, who was the coalition member who quit the party or was kicked out of the party because of allegations from Leah Thorpe, he is up for election next election, as he was elected in 2019. I believe he is not running, and I do not believe he's going to be starting his own political party, so he's not on here on the side. And this other independent here is Lydia Thorpe, who will not be up for election next election, as she was elected last election. Let's just quickly look at the news poll, opinion polls of the states that we got, the quarterlies. Keep in mind that the major parties usually get a couple of percentage points lower than they do in the House in the Senate elections, and usually a couple of percentage points lower than what is reported in these kind of opinion polls. But I mean, obviously, it's still 18 months out, so these numbers don't mean too much. But we can make some sort of judgments based on them. We've also got the Resolve Strategic, which I believe is probably less reliable than the news poll. But we could also sort of like take some info off that as well, and we could compare it to the news poll. Let's start with Queensland. Now, Queensland was very interesting last election because it ended up with a 50-50 left and right split of seats, which has not happened for a while. I can't remember the last time that happened, but it hasn't happened for a while. And I believe that next election, it will be the same. Currently, Labor is polling around 30% in Queensland. If we check back to this poll in Queensland, they're on 30, and on this one, they're on 33. So they need 28, and I believe that they should have enough to get, the left should have enough to get a 50-50 split again. The Greens should get around 12-13%, which is enough for them to get a seat as well. I believe it'll be the status quo, really. The two-party preferred is looking like, at the moment, around 52-48 to the coalition, which is actually a 2% swing to Labor. One would expect that Queensland would swing a little bit to the coalition because of the fact that Peter Dutton is leader and he's a Queenslander. But there's more to, the electorate than just who's leader. And Scott Morrison was somewhat popular last election. I mean, it could just be because he was a Conservative. But yeah, there's no indication that there's going to be a swing towards the coalition in Queensland. I guess you could look at what's happening with the state election, which we'll go into next video. The coalition is looking like they're going to win that election, but Queenslanders always view state politics differently to federal politics. They always see a difference in the two. So I think it's just going to be the status quo. One nation will win again. They didn't have the greatest election last time, but they still managed to win a seat. I don't see any swing against them there. So we'll move on to New South Wales. So New South Wales is usually pretty status quo as well. There is a chance that One Nation could nab a seat off the coalition in New South Wales. So we, according to Resolve Strategic, One Nation are on 8%, which is pretty high. According to News Poll, they're on 5%, which is not very high. So One Nation have a chance of winning a seat here. This was the state with the highest primary vote for the coalition last election. So it should be the place where they should be able to maintain 3 seats the easiest. But there is looking like there's a bit of a swing towards Labour in New South Wales. I don't think it will be enough for them to win 3 seats and for the Greens to also win 1. So the left have 4 seats. I don't think that's enough for that. The Greens should still maintain their seat. So I believe that New South Wales would be a status quo result. Off to South Australia now. The indication is that this will also be a status quo result. The only contender really there is, once again, One Nation. News Poll is interesting because it is giving One Nation 11% in South Australia. We don't have a specific poll for South Australia in Result Strategic, so we can only really base on News Poll. That is pretty high, and I believe it was between One Nation and the coalition for the final seat last election. So I mean, once again, they have a chance there, and there is a swing towards Labor in South Australia, which would indicate that at the very least the coalition's primary vote is going to drop there. The primary vote for the coalition, according to the News Poll, is pretty low at 30%, which, if we were to believe that, then getting 3 seats would be quite difficult for the coalition. I'd say this is the state where Labor have maybe the best chance of getting 3 seats this election time. So I believe that probably that last seat there should come down to either One Nation, the coalition, or Labor. Who do I think is most likely to get it? I think it's going to be the coalition again. But yeah, definitely a big question mark there. As for WA, the Labor did really well last election, got 3 seats, while the Greens also got 1. I do not believe it's going to happen again. Last time, Matt McGowan has left, and the state government is now quite on the nose. Once again, I believe that it will be between the coalition and One Nation for that final seat. News Poll is giving them 6% in WA. So I do believe that probably One Nation has a good chance of nabbing a seat in one of these 3 states. I don't know which one. If I would give one state where it would be the most likely, it'd probably be South Australia, because the coalition's primary vote looks kind of low there. Right, so let's move on to Victoria. Victoria is one of the more difficult ones to predict, because I could see Labor getting a 3rd seat here, but there is a swing, according to News Poll, against Labor in the state of Victoria. They only get 36% on the primary vote. One Nation is not looking good here either, and I do not believe that United Australia Party, who is not being polled here on News Poll, will have as much of a chance to grab a seat as last time, because this whole COVID thing is not as big of a deal anymore. According to Result Strategic, One Nation's vote isn't too bad here, actually. But it does have ALP quite high. I do not believe at the moment that the coalition... I mean, this is actually quite good for them, 35 in Victoria. But I don't believe that the coalition, if they weren't able to get 3 seats last time, even if there is, according to News Poll, a little bit of a swing towards them, like 1%. But I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to get a 3rd seat here. So that seat is really up in the air. I really don't know who it's going to go to. It could go to One Nation, or it could go to Labor. I just don't know. So I'm going to leave that one blank for now. Tasmania, that's the easiest state. I don't really need to look at too much of the numbers. Both the major parties are pretty poor there. The Greens are getting the sort of status quo result, and Jackie Lambie will win a seat. She's up for election, and she will win a seat there. And that is pretty consistent with the News Poll, that result. Now, David Pocock is up for election, because of course he is, because the ACT, they're always up for election again. And I do believe that he'll win his seat back there in ACT, and the other seat will go to Labour. And nothing will happen in Northern Territory. It's going to be the status quo unless something ridiculous happens. So this shall be the result, I believe, or something very similar to this. As you can see, there's one seat missing in Victoria. So if Labour does manage to win a seat there or win a third seat in any other state, that will allow them to pass legislation without needing anyone more than the Greens. Otherwise, it is going to be pretty similar to how it is at the moment, where they need the Greens plus one other senator. Actually, no, I think at the moment they need two other senators because of the fact that Lydia Thorpe ditched the party, so ditched the Greens. Actually, yeah, Labour will. It's a little bit better for them, but it's pretty similar to how it is at the moment. It's not going to be anything really radical. Like, let's see, like I'm just saying, like 27 plus 3, 30, 31, 33, 34, 35. So they're very far off. Even if someone else wins it, they're very far off getting to a point where they could pass legislation without the Greens or the coalition. So they'll definitely need the Greens, and they may or may not need somebody else. So nothing will fundamentally change with this Senate result. There's nothing too interesting, really. The coalition are on a pretty bad 29. I think that's the worst that they've been for a while. But a lot of things could change between now and the next election. At the moment, it's not the greatest polling for Labour. They are not doing as well as they were doing 6 months ago. And if I did this video 6 months ago, you would have Labour winning 3 seats in WA, maybe South Australia, Victoria, maybe even New South Wales, like easy peasy. But yeah, things aren't going as well for them. So it's not like it's like an amazing time for Labour that I'm doing this this video. And I kind of waited until we got to a point where like Labour weren't like having 55-45 leads, because there was no way they were going to maintain those leads until the election. There was a reason I held off making a video like this. Does any other party have a chance? Not at the moment, really. Legalized cannabis, I think, did pretty well in Queensland, but there's just no openings for them. Of course, if this was a double dissolution, they have a great chance of winning at least one seat. But this isn't a double dissolution. Pauline Hanson's One Nation, they are up a little bit in the polls compared to the last election. So that's why they actually have a chance in some of these states other than Queensland. But there's a very good chance that they'll completely miss out, and all of these states here will just end up being like full like 3 seats for coalition each. Like Peter Dutton is, I think he's doing pretty, like he doesn't have a great satisfaction rating, and he's still pretty far behind on Better Prime Minister, but I think he's doing better than most people expected he would. So I don't think it's completely ridiculous to say that he would maintain getting 3 seats in New South Wales, SA, and WA. But I just don't think that he's going to win more than 2 seats in Queensland, Victoria, or Tasmania. I just don't think it's... No polling is indicating that at the moment. All right, as I said earlier, the next video that is coming out will be on the Queensland state election, which is not for another year. But thank you for watching, everybody, and I will do another video on predicting the Senate and maybe the House with one of these actual like maps, which is not what I did in the video I released the other day. It was more of a this discussion on things in general rather than a full-on prediction. But I'll be doing one of those videos more closely to election day, maybe in a couple of months' time. I mean, I might as well do one after the next News Poll Quarterly comes out. I don't think things will have changed much, but it will be interesting to see if we have some more conclusive evidence on things like, you know, who could win this final seat in Victoria. I really wish that News Poll did poll the United Australia Party. They have a seat in Victoria, and they did do pretty well across the country last election. I believe they got something like 4%. So I do not know why they don't poll the United Australia Party. I really wish they did. But yeah, it makes it hard to know how well they're doing in places like Victoria. All right, that's it. That's all I have to say. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, and just quickly, I am aware that the Lib Dems are not called the Lib Dems anymore, or the Liberal Democrats. They're called the Libertarian Party. I forgot to change the labels, but they're not going to win any seats anyway. And in some states, they are still called the Lib Dems, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I thought I'd just mention that. Goodbye.